Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, episode 23. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois.
The Food Professor is presented by Omnovos, the digital customer engagement solution for grocery and restaurant marketers, helping you solve your customer's most daunting question. What should I eat today? Find out how you can get personal and grow sales with Omnovos at realcustomerengagement.com. Well, a great episode coming up, Sylvain. We had a great guest coming up for our listeners, Ken Keelor, CEO of the amazing Calgary Co-op, one of the last remaining big indie grocers left in Canada, but such a solid, diversified business. I'm always so impressed when I talk to Ken, his approach. And I think, and you'll hear in the interview, listeners will hear how the risk and opportunity of this consolidation that we're seeing, for them to make that clarion statement that we're local, we're here to stay. And I think what's interesting is their co-op structure is maybe the secret sauce to staying small but staying successful. What do you think about that?
I think so, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to talk about that with Ken. I'm a bit of a fan of cooperatives, to be honest, especially in agri-food. They've done very well. I mean, some of them have survived for decades just because they were cooperatives. They tend to manage risks differently. The management is also very different. When you think of Gailey in Ontario, Desjardins in Quebec, and Desjardins is a big supporter of the agri-food sector. The Co-op Fédéré also in Quebec, which is a multi-billion-dollar business, AgroPure. I mean, those are all cooperatives that have done fairly well. And often cooperatives tend to think about the supply chain. They think about processing. They think about farmers. They think most importantly about the community. And their role and the cooperative's role in the community. How can they give back? And so I've always admired cooperatives, and I suspect that Ken will have a similar story to offer to us.
Well, and I do business with and have as a client actually a cooperative in the financial space, and there's lots of wonderful co-ops that are available across Canada, coast to coast. And you're right, it's the role that they play in the community, whether it's an ethnic-based co-op or whether, whatever, a group of workers, whatever it is. I have another important question for you. What's your favorite donut?
Sure.
What's your favorite donut?
My favorite donut.
If I was to offer you a donut.
I don't really eat a whole lot of donuts, but I would guess. I mean, I have a sweet spot. I guess I have a bit of a. I love apple fritters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I have a real passion for a maple with some bacon on it, which sounds initially, when I thought about it, kind of a little bit weird, if not odd. But I just wanted to call attention to, for our listeners, that if they didn't check it out, I had a great interview as a bonus episode with Chris Schultz, the CEO of Voodoo Donuts from Portland.
That's right.
And they've got, if you never checked them out, maybe you haven't been to Portland, which I hadn't. Check them out. Well, I've been to Portland, but I didn't know Voodoo Donuts. Check them out. Their donuts are so fun. And it's a great interview. And it reminded me, I wish the time would have worked out so we could have both spoke to him, because his focus on culture, right? That was the center of my conversation. I get it if you got 3, 4, 5 stores to have a unique culture. And it's not dissimilar than the conversation we'll have with Ken at Calgary Co-op. How do you take that culture, keep it intact, and be successful when you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 stores? Like, how do you keep it intact? So that's the central conversation. It's a great interview. Like I said, you would have really enjoyed meeting him yourself, but next time we'll be in the same place at the same time. So
yeah. Just for the record, Michael, maple and bacon can go together.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you. Bacon, maple, come on.
They on a donut. I was skeptical at first, but then I had one and I'm a bit of a convert. So we've got a wonderful, I mean, it does on a, as a comic in all seriousness, so to speak, it does get to the point of indulgences, right? We're seeing a lot of consumers buying indulgences. I know my local bespoke donut store, you got to line up early. They sell out, early on a Saturday morning. So it does seem that the consumers have got these paradoxes, right? You were talking just now about the online about the meat paradox. Meat sales are going up, but more people are health conscious / plant-based protein. They're having more indulgent. Is this a COVID thing? Right. Are people just indulging themselves because they these are tough days, right? we've been through a long haul. There's still more left. Is that what your sense is?
I think I don't think it's a COVID thing because it was happening actually before COVID. I think there's some confusion in terms of how people see themselves as protein consumers per se. I think the whole protein category is being redefined by us all. I mean, you go into a grocery store now. About 2 years ago, you saw the Beyond Meat right next to the bloody stuff, and now you're seeing separate sections. And often you'll find out that unprocessed vegetable proteins are actually close to the meat counter. So you'll have a bag of lentils, a bag of chickpeas, and you see that there's a lot of trial and error going on, which really is reflective of where the consumer is. So on the one side, people are eating; they're not giving up on meat, and we see it in our data.
Right.
Canadians still enjoy meat; they're not giving it up, especially when it comes to the trifecta of meat: pork, chicken, and beef.
And beef,
But they're becoming more curious. They're looking at plant-based. They're looking at the 50-50 hybrid. I was never a fan of the 50-50, but it seems to be, for some people, it seems to be doing it for them. But overall, what I really like with the marketplace right now is that there's more diversity and more choice for consumers. And as soon as you do that, you allow innovation to happen. And this is what we're seeing.
Right. Well, and you're right. Choice is a winning strategy 10 out of 10 times. We do a takeout once a week. We did it from a burger place. They had the Impossible Burger, which is a plant-based for flexitarians like me. And it was delicious. It was a delicious product. And I didn't buy it because I like the taste of burgers. I haven't had a meat burger in 30 years. Don't eat red meat. So I'm two parts of the trifecta. One part I just gave up. But it was good. But
well, what's the reason why you gave up on?
Well,
beef?
that's a good question. I mean, it was less about health and more just about it. I was traveling in Egypt with my wife, and that's all we ate for 2 straight weeks. Because sometimes in Egypt, if you start, having some of the produce, you're going to have a friend for life. Some parasites kind of go along for the ride. So we did nothing but eat meat.
Yeah.
And when we got back, and I'm like, we're so tired of eating meat. We switched to being vegetarians, not vegans, but vegetarians for years. We didn't.
Really?
Yeah, we switched.
Wow.
And then when we had kids, we kind of worked our way back and I don't know. Anyway, so now
But that was a while. So I assume that in those days, when you became a vegetarian, you didn't have a whole lot of choices out there.
It was a good thing I like pasta. Let's put it that way. Right? Or you'd have these veggie burgers that had an ingredient deck that looked like it was on a spaceship, right? They were terrible for you, really. They weren't good for you in general, or they were dry like the desert kind of thing. But anyway, all right. So,
but I think in the Canadian economy for decades, I mean, non-animal protein consumers were marginalized. Really,
yeah.
When you look at on the supply side, they were marginalized, and now they're embraced. They're socially normalized, which is nice. I mean, it's nice to see. So yeah, I'm happy with how things are, but I think there's a lot of unfinished business. I think there's a lot to see unfold over the next few years.
So one of the things I did eat a lot of and continue to do so is fish. Now, I saw some notes in the market that some testing of fish that actually was some DNA testing seemed, I think it was 92, 93% of the fish tested turned out to be the fish that you would expect it to be. And
exactly.
And I was actually glad of that. What did you think of that number, that 92%? I thought it was a good number, but what did you think?
Oh, it was higher than expected because in the past few years we saw alarming results coming from groups like Oceana, for example. We suspected that perhaps 25 to 75% of all the fish eaten in food service is counterfeited or
mislabeled
not
or
labeled. Not labeled correctly. Now this report looked at imported unprocessed fish. And so they just tested some samples as they were entering the Canadian market. So 92% is actually not bad, because when you understand the fish and seafood industry, which is highly obscure, a lot of stuff happens out there in the middle of nowhere,
And
middle of the
fish are,
ocean.
are renamed all the time, right? And fish are rebranded all the time, right? Some fish called something, then it's called something
Exactly.
else, and
There are thousands and thousands of species, and unless you're an expert, it can get confusing. So 92% is actually not bad, and I was happy that the CFI actually looked into it, and most importantly, actually release results, because that's really the most important thing in my view, because Canadians will know. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done at retail, because I think there are concerns within the supply chain in processing, and in particular, I think in food service, there's a lot of not so great stuff going on there, unfortunately.
hmm. Well, let's keep an eye on that. Now, before we get to our interview with Ken Keelor, let's go back to Egypt, so to speak. I mentioned Egypt. Who knew the supply chain globally would go sideways with a boat stuck in the Suez Canal? Uh, it's just a note of the time that everybody's focused on. Oh my God, the supply chain, the supply chain. Most people wouldn't even know what a supply chain was 12 months ago. Now it's part of our verbiage. But you said some things that were really insightful around the amount of food, even from going through the Suez Canal, livestock, incredible amounts of food, and that's still the boat was stuck for 3-4 days, but it created a log jam like a cork, so it could still impact our shelves in the next coming weeks and months. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a bit of an impact, not too much, because I mean, the blockage was what, six
Yeah, yeah,
days or
yeah.
so, 400 ships. I mean, I certainly was concerned for a while, because it's basically 25% of containers global traffic right
Hmm.
there in the Suez Canal,
Incredible. Incredible.
globally. So it's a huge problem. It was a huge problem, but it goes to show that
Literally
infrastructure.
and figuratively, by the way, literally and figuratively. When a boat the size
Exactly.
of the Empire State Building gets lodged, it's sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah.
You were saying,
Yeah, no problem. In 2013, when the ship actually sank along the coast of Italy, I don't know if you
hmm
remember the cruise ship,
yeah,
and there was a report that was actually written after the incident, and one of the suggestions that was made in the report was about infrastructure. It was about, okay, how do we deal with these massive ships
yeah,
when there are incidences like that. And again, when I was looking at the Suez Canal, I think everything was attempted. I think I even saw Theodore's tugboat there
yeah.
to try to pull
It's
that
true.
ship out. But the
Yeah,
obvious thing to do, in my view, was to unload cargo to make the ship lighter, so it can rise, and we can actually, on you can actually unlock it. But they couldn't do that because they just didn't have the equipment. So what is being suggested right now is to actually have a fee of 10 cents per container for these ships,
Hmm.
to create this fund to buy infrastructure, global infrastructure, to accommodate some of these problems that
Problems.
that do
Yeah,
occur from time to
yeah.
time, because it's not gonna be the last time.
Right, right. And last note on that, they were looking to get one of these big Sikorsky helicopters, right? Because it's so big that they needed a
Yeah.
helicopter to get those cans, as they kind of the trade calls them, off that boat. Anyway, just it's 2021, it's the COVID era. Something weird's going to happen like every week, it seems. So that's last week's
Exactly.
bit of weirdness. Well, I was going to bring up New Brunswick, because recently it was announced that even though they put an RFP on the table to privatize, New Brunswick has stayed with, and my good friend Laura Wood, who is GM of Cannabis NB, they've turned that business around, and it's now making them money, and looks like they're going to stay with the public
Yeah.
sector model, right?
Yeah, they are, and I think they just needed to be a little bit
Mm,
patient, because I mean, cannabis was legalized in Canada for about 3 years now.
almost, yeah.
So I think I thought that the New Brunswick government was a little impatient when they actually decided to sell. I think they got I believe they got 7 proposals, and I suspect that all of the proposals were not very interesting. I believe one of them actually came from Couche-Tard, but all of them were unsuccessful, and the New Brunswick government decided to keep it, which is, I think, a good thing. And because I mean, first of all, the government needs the revenue. They
Yeah.
really need the revenue. So I don't think it was a bad idea to keep it.
Well, I like your idea about patience because the foundation of the business was strong, and everywhere it had to settle out. Like you couldn't get the right supply, the demand. Now there's an overabundance of supply. There's more SKUs. I talked to a lot of cannabis retailers who are more and more happy with the choices they can actually make now versus buying the same stuff that everybody else bought. So we wish our friends
Yeah.
at Cannabis New Brunswick continued success.
When you look at all the stocks in the last 12 months, how they
Yeah.
perform, I mean, in the top 20, you basically have 3 cannabis companies
Yeah.
right there, and they've done very well. Why? Because, well, uh, the market is being recalibrated. There was too much supply. Now, of course, because there was a bit of a cannabis bubble, I mean, markets tend to be very powerful. They correct themselves, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened just before COVID, and COVID kind of allowed the demand side to actually pick up. And we're actually going to be conducting a new study on cannabis in the spring, and we're going to be looking at how people have responded to COVID, and if their cannabis consumption have gone up, and if they're actually making more edibles at home, because we all know, and we've talked about this before, the edible market is a bit of a challenge for the processing industry.
Well, I'll be keen to read the study because the difference between increased consumption in the legal market versus overall, right? So we see more legal consumption, but is that truly just moving it from the black market to legal consumption? So is net consumption up, down, or sideways? So that'd be a great report. I look forward to reading that. When about would you have the results from that?
Oh, probably I'd say in May or June. We're going through ethics right now, so we should get the results back soon. And once we have approval, we'll get out
All
there.
right. So Sylvain, what else
Yeah,
have you got in the hopper from the lab? What else is on the in the works?
yeah. So prior to the cannabis study, we're actually about to go to field for 2 other studies. One is about weight management and
Mm,
stress. We've been talking a lot about the COVID
right.
15 or the other COVID-19 people, gaining pounds. There was a study recently in the U.S. Uh, organized by the American Psychology Association, and they figured out that more than 60% of Americans have actually gained weight in the last 12 months. So we're gonna kind of replicate that study and see whether or not in Canada it's the same thing. And the other study is on allergens, allergies and intolerances, which we've done in the past. A few years ago, we wanted to see if things have changed, because our notion of risks as a society has probably changed as a result of COVID. Are people more anxious, less anxious? Has it gotten more people to think about allergies? And we're working with a few groups on that project as well.
Well, I tell you, it's anxiety for me because is it my allergies acting up or is it do I have COVID? I mean, my God, it's the good news is I wear a mask all the time, so I actually think my allergies, which aren't too bad, they're seasonal, might be actually better. One of the benefits of wearing a mask, I don't mind wearing a mask. So no flu, no allergies. At a
Yeah.
perfect.
And by the way,
Yeah.
Michael, I looked at some Nielsen IQ data recently. We did talk a lot about toilet paper, and
Mm,
sales were up because people were home and spending
yeah.
more time at home. Obviously, they were up 19% from last year. But tissues, Kleenex sales are down because, well, apparently we were less sick. We weren't sneezing as much. So there you go.
Well, the good news is, I guess it's kind of a good example of like when your toast falls off the kitchen table and lands butter side up. There's less flu, right? There's you can count the flu in the dozens in this country. It's really
Exactly.
quite phenomenal. Toilet paper, I think that's just a shift from offices to homes, right? So net consumption has probably not gone up. I would assume, though Who knows? Who knows? It's COVID.
Yeah.
But Kleenex is one of those net things. Yeah, never dull, Anyway, so we'll look forward to maybe talking about those on the next episode or the episode after that. Fantastic.
Probably, in about a month, we'll be ready to talk about those things. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, excellent.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks again to the folks at Omnovos for being our presenting sponsor. And if you liked what you heard, you can subscribe or follow us on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review. Be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the grocery, food service, or restaurant industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast and a bunch of other stuff.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois.
All right, everyone out there, have a great week, Sylvain. Talk to you again soon.
Take care.